AITA for locking out my ex after she called off our wedding for another man? The smell of the sea came through the window of the apartment I rented in the North Park neighborhood. It was that briny San Diego air when the wind blows in from the Pacific, the kind that gets into your clothes and lingers no matter how many times you wash them. I had a coffee in my hand, cold for 20 minutes now, and a banquet cancellation request on the table. It was 11 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, and Vanessa had not slept in that bed for 6 days. I am going to tell this exactly as I remember it, without embellishments, without playing the victim more than necessary, and without pretending that I was perfect the whole time, because I was not, but I was the one who stayed behind picking up the pieces. My name is Jason. I am 31 years old, and I work as an electrical inspector for a company that services commercial buildings and manufacturing facilities in the Kearny Mesa area. It is not a glamorous job, but it pays well and allows me to live without owing anything to anyone. That was always important to me, although back then I did not know how much. Vanessa and I met at a birthday party for a second cousin that neither of us saw very often. She was 23. I was 25. She had her hair tied back with a burgundy ribbon that kept falling out, and she fixed it every 2 minutes without stopping her talking. That was the first thing I noticed. She spoke with an energy that did not seem forced. She laughed loudly, gave her opinion without asking permission, and asked me directly if the tattoo on my forearm meant anything or if it was pure decoration. I told her it was the zip code of the neighborhood where I grew up in Chula Vista. She laughed and said that was the most honest thing she had heard all night. We lasted 5 years. We moved in together in our 3rd year. We got the apartment in the North Park neighborhood through a contact at her work. She was a logistics coordinator at a distribution company that operated out of the area and near the airport. It was not a large apartment, but it had a decent view of the hill and a balcony where I put my herb plants, which never thrived because of the salt in the air. We got engaged in December. I asked her in the kitchen without a ring yet, because I wanted to know first if she was sure before spending money on something she might not want. She said yes with a mouthful of breakfast burrito. I like that. She did not need a big scene. I bought the ring later at a jewelry store in the Gaslamp Quarter for $250. She said she loved it, and I believed her. The event preparations took 10 months. We booked a venue in Pacific Beach, one that had a terrace overlooking the ocean. The complete package cost $12,000. Banquet, music, decoration, waiters, open bar. We paid half up front and the rest in monthly installments. She bought the dress at a shop in the Fashion Valley area with her mom's help. The guests were confirmed, 120 people between the two of us. My family was coming from Los Angeles and Sacramento. Her family was all from here. There was a detail in our relationship that I always treated as normal, although now I understand I should have paid more attention to it. Connor. Connor had been Vanessa's best friend since high school. They met in a debate club at their local public high school and had been inseparable ever since. He was a freelance graphic designer, worked from his house in the Claremont neighborhood, and had the kind of personality everyone likes, quiet but attentive, with precise comments that always came at exactly the right time. He was not loud. He did not compete for attention. He was simply there. I never had a real problem with him. I saw him at gatherings, at birthdays. Sometimes he came to the apartment for dinner. Vanessa consulted him for everything. Work decisions, problems with her mom, doubts about the wedding. He gave his opinion thoughtfully, and she listened to him with an attention that, to be honest, she sometimes did not give me, but I attributed it to the dynamic of their friendship. 15 years of knowing each other generates a particular intimacy, and I was not going to compete with that. What I did notice, and I acknowledge this now with the distance that time gives, is that Vanessa changed subtly when Connor was present. It was not anything dramatic. Her voice would drop half a tone. Her gestures became more restrained, as if she wanted to seem more serious or more interesting. And he looked at her in a way that was not exactly that of a friend. It was not an obvious look. It was a look of waiting. The signs I ignored were the classic ones. The laughter that stopped when I showed up, the phone flipped over when a message from him arrived, the unprompted explanations about where they had been or what they had talked about. None of that, separately, was enough to confront anyone, but together it formed a pattern that I chose not to see. 10 days before the wedding, Vanessa started acting strange. It was not just nervousness, it was distance. She would get home from work and lock herself in the bedroom. She ate dinner in silence. She answered in monosyllables. One night, I asked her directly if something was bothering her. She took too long to answer. No, it is the stress of the event, she said. I believed her because it was easier to believe that than to face what my stomach already suspected. 4 days later, I came back early from an inspection at a manufacturing facility in Kearney Mesa. I entered the apartment quietly because I had a headache and all I wanted was darkness and silence. I found them in the living room. They were not doing anything physical, but the distance between them on the couch was that of two people who, minutes before, had been closer. Connor had an expression I had never seen on him, guilt mixed with something I could not identify until later. She stood up quickly, as if she had been caught doing something she knew was wrong. I asked her what was going on. She told me they were looking at playlist options for the wedding. I did not believe her, but I did not say anything. I went to the bedroom and stared at the ceiling until I heard the front door close. That night, I tried to talk to her. I gave her the chance to be honest. I asked her point blank if there was something between her and Connor. She denied everything. She told me I was projecting insecurities, that she would never do something like that I should trust her. She used that word, trust, as if it were a shield. 3 days before the wedding, Vanessa asked me to sit down. She did not turn on the TV. She did not prepare anything. She just sat in front of me with her hands intertwined and her gaze fixed on a spot on the floor that I could not see. She told me that Connor had confessed his feelings to her, that he was in love with her, that he had been for years. I waited. I did not say anything. Then she told me she wanted to postpone the wedding, not cancel, postpone, as if the difference mattered. I asked her why. She replied that she needed time to process what she had heard, that she could not get married with that doubt hanging over her, that it would be unfair to both of us. I asked if she felt anything for him. She took 11 seconds to answer. I counted them. 11 seconds where my entire life fit into the silence. She said she was not sure. That was the answer that broke everything. Not a yes, not a no. A gray area that, to me, was clearer than any confession. The argument that followed was not a screaming match. It was worse. It was full of measured phrases, of logical arguments that hid decisions already made. She talked about needing space, about exploring, about not wanting to make a mistake. I told her that if marrying me was the mistake she was worried about, then the answer was already a given. At some point, she dropped what she really wanted to say. She was going to leave with Connor, not as a couple, according to her, just to clear her head, to figure things out. 3 months. I told her that if she walked through that door with that intention, there was no guarantee I would still be on the other side when she came back. She replied that she understood, that it was a risk she was willing to take. What destroyed me was not that she was leaving. It was how easily she accepted losing me. She left on a Thursday morning, packed a medium suitcase, the same one we used to go to Temecula on weekends, and left without drama. There were no goodbye hugs, no crying at the door, just an, I will let you know when I get there, that never came. I stood in the kitchen after the door closed. There was a coffee mug of hers on the counter with the rim stained with lipstick. I washed it. I dried it, put it in its place in the cupboard. Then I sat on the kitchen floor, not on a chair, on the floor, with my back against the refrigerator, feeling the motor vibrate against my shoulder blades. I stayed there for 40 minutes. I did not cry. I did not think about anything specific. I just registered the fact that the apartment did not sound the same anymore without another person inside. The silence had a different texture, thicker, as if the air weighed more. That night, I slept on the couch because the bed smelled like her shampoo, and I did not feel like dealing with that. I put a Padres game on the TV without volume and kept staring at the screen until dawn. Canceling a wedding 3 days prior is not a procedure, it is a demolition. The venue in Pacific Beach kept 60% of the deposit. The banquet service returned less than $600 of the $5,000 we had paid. The photographer returned nothing. The music, the table decorations, the flower centerpieces she had chosen so carefully. All of that turned into invoices without an event. In total, I lost around $7,000. Money I had saved up over a year and a half of overtime and weekend work. My mom called me from Los Angeles crying. Not for me, but out of the shame of having to let everyone know. My aunts and uncles had bought new clothes. My cousin Courtney had requested time off work to come from Sacramento. Cousin Noah already had plane tickets bought. I had to call each one and explain something that not even I fully understood yet. I spent the first few weeks on autopilot. I went to work, did my inspections, and returned to the apartment that now felt way too big for just one person. I did not feel immediate sadness. I felt a kind of anesthesia, like when you hit your funny bone and your fingers fall asleep before the real pain sets in. What came next was different. It was not sadness. It was an uncomfortable clarity. I started reviewing the 5 years we had spent together with eyes I did not have before. I remembered conversations where she mentioned Connor with a frequency that I had normalized. I remembered how he always knew things about our lives that I did not recall telling anyone. I remembered one time at a dinner with friends in a restaurant downtown, where she defended him with disproportionate vehemence when someone joked about him still being single. "You guys just do not know him like I do," she said. At the time, it seemed like a friend's loyalty to me. Now I understand it was something else. Little by little, I started to reorganize what I could. I changed the apartment's layout. I moved the couch where I found them into the guest room. I started cooking seriously for the first time. Before, she took care of that, not because she liked it, but because she did not trust my skills. I discovered I was good at it. I made barbecue on Sundays on a borrowed grill left to me by a coworker, a guy named Matt, who lived in the Mira Mesa neighborhood and who was the first person to offer me a beer without asking how I was doing. It was Matt who introduced me to Allison. It was not intentional. Matt hosted a barbecue on a Saturday in his backyard, and she was there because she was his wife's coworker at a veterinary clinic in the Mission Valley area. Allison was a veterinarian. She was 30 years old, had short hair, hands that always smelled like surgical soap, and a laugh that did not ask permission to come out. Our first conversation was about a dog she had operated on that morning, a German Shepherd with an intestinal blockage caused by a sock. She told the details with a naturalness that would have bothered someone else, but to me, it seemed honest. There was no filter, no posturing. We started seeing each other after that barbecue. First by coincidence, we would bump into each other at the Ralph store in North Park, at the gas station on the freeway. Then it became deliberate. Coffees at a spot on University Avenue that had mustard yellow painted walls and wooden tables that wobbled if you did not put a piece of cardboard underneath them. Walks along the Pacific Beach boardwalk when neither of us felt like talking much. One time we went to eat fish tacos at a stand near the Crystal Pier, and she got green salsa all over her blouse. And instead of getting upset, she laughed and said it was an occupational hazard of eating like regular folks. One Friday, she invited me to tag along to an emergency consultation. A lady in the Kensington neighborhood had a cat with a stubborn fever. Allison arrived at the house with her medical bag, examined the animal with a patience I had not seen in anyone, and while giving it an injection, she explained to me in a low voice what she was doing and why. She was not teaching me. She was sharing something she cared about. We left that house at 11 o'clock at night, and the San Diego air was cold, that damp cold you feel more in your bones than on your skin. She rubbed her hands together, and I took them without thinking. It was the first time I touched her. She did not say anything. She just squeezed back. With Allison, I discovered something I had forgotten with Vanessa. The peace of mind of being with someone who does not make you feel like you are competing with a ghost. She knew about my situation. I told her the basics without going into detail, and she never asked unnecessary questions. She did not ask me to prove anything to her. She was just there. The 3 months that Vanessa asked for passed without me counting them. My life no longer revolved around her decision. I was not waiting for her. I did not miss her with the intensity one expected to feel. I missed her the way you miss a habit, not the way you miss a person. Allison spent time at the apartment. We cooked together. She would bring her cat, a Siamese named Mia, who slept on my pillow, and I allowed it because Allison laughed every time she found her there. There was no urgency. There were no big promises. There was the present, and that was enough. The day Vanessa came back, I was frying plantains in the kitchen, and Allison was sitting at the counter reading an article about anesthesia and reptiles. There was a knock on the door, not the doorbell, the door. Loud, spaced-out knocks, with a cadence I recognized before opening. When I opened it, it took me 3 seconds to recognize her. She was thinner than she should be. Dark circles marked her cheekbones in a way that made her look older. Her hair was messy, her lips were chapped, and she had the look of someone who has not slept well in weeks. She said my name and broke down. It was not a controlled cry. It was the kind of crying that comes out when there is no energy left to hold it back. I hesitated before letting her in, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. My body knew that whatever she was bringing with her was going to upset the balance that had taken me months to build, but I let her in because her condition was alarming. She saw Allison and stopped dead in her tracks. Her expression changed from pleading to something more complex: surprise, jealousy, shame, all at the same time. She did not ask who she was. She knew. Allison did not move. She looked at me, not at her, as if asking me with her eyes what I wanted her to do. I signaled her to stay. Vanessa spoke without me asking her to. The words came out jumbled, as if she had rehearsed a speech that fell apart when she saw reality. She said she had made a mistake, that Connor was not what she thought, that everything she had idealized about him fell apart in a matter of weeks. She did not go into excessive detail, but she painted a clear picture. Living with him revealed aspects that years of friendship had hidden, controlling attitudes that he disguised as care, comments that made her feel small, and insecurity that he projected onto her in ways that were subtle at first and then no longer were. According to her, she discovered that the Connor who treated her as a friend and the Connor who acted as a partner were two completely different people. Then she paused, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and the next thing she said changed the weight of the entire conversation. She told me that weeks ago she started feeling sick, constant fatigue, unintentional weight loss, a weakness that did not go away with rest. She went to the doctor, they ran tests. The results came back abnormal. They ordered more specific studies. Her voice broke at that point. She mentioned the results pointed to a serious condition he had passed on to her. Allison sat up straight in her chair. I did not react immediately, not out of insensitivity, but out of saturation. Vanessa continued. She said that when she confronted Connor, he did not deny it. He confessed that he had known about his condition since before he was with her, that he had contracted it in a previous relationship she did not know about, that he had not told her anything because, in his words, she was his last chance at having something real, and he did not want to ruin it with the truth. That was what was hardest for me to process, not the condition itself, but the magnitude of the lie. Someone who supposedly loved her hid something from her that would change her life forever, and he did it out of pure selfishness disguised as fear. Vanessa said that when she confronted him, Connor reacted with an indifference that left her frozen. He downplayed everything. He said it was not a big deal, that with treatment you live a normal life, as if the decision to expose her without her consent was a minor detail. When she finished speaking, she looked at me with red eyes and asked to come back. Directly, without preamble, she said she had nowhere to go, that her mom had taken her in, but the relationship was tense, that she needed someone who knew her, that she needed me. I looked at her. I did not feel anger nor compassion in the way she expected. I felt the same cold clarity that had accompanied me for the past few months. I told her no. I did not raise my voice. I did not try to hurt her. I explained to her that what she did was not an impulsive mistake. It was a deliberate choice with consequences that she accepted beforehand. I reminded her that when she left, I warned her exactly what was going to happen, and that she replied she was willing to take that risk. I told her I was sorry for what she was going through, that no one deserved what Connor did to her, but that her medical situation did not erase what she decided to do with our relationship. She tried to interrupt me. She started talking about regret, about second chances, about how people change. I let her finish and then repeated what I had said. No. Allison spoke for the first time. Her voice was firm, but not aggressive. She said something that summarized what I had been thinking for months, but had not put into words. That decisions carry weight, and expecting someone to take you in after you discarded them is not love, it is convenience. Vanessa cried harder. She tried one last argument, something about the 5 years we shared, about what we built, about how she had always loved me. I replied that if 5 years were not enough for her to be certain about us, 3 months with someone else were not going to give her that certainty either. A long silence fell. Outside, you could hear the sound of a garbage truck passing down the street and the distant barking of a dog. Normal sounds of a normal night in North Park. Meanwhile, inside the apartment, 3 people breathed air that felt too thick. Vanessa looked around the apartment as if taking inventory of the changes. The new couch, Allison's plants on the balcony, some succulents that did survive the salt in the air, unlike my herbs. Mia's leash hanging on the coat rack by the entrance. Everything that confirmed her absence had been filled. Not with her memory, but with new life. I asked her to leave, not with hostility, but with the same clinical distance with which she had announced her departure months before. She stood there for a few seconds, looking at me as if searching for a crack in my expression where she could slip through. She did not find one. She walked toward the door. Before walking out, she said she was sorry. I did not answer. The door closed. Allison did not say anything for a while. She sat next to me on the couch, the new couch I bought at a store in Mission Valley to replace the other one, and placed her hand over mine without squeezing it. The cat climbed onto the backrest and stayed there looking toward the door, as if she were also confirming that it was not going to open again. That night we cooked what we were preparing before the interruption. Fried plantains, refried beans, Monterey Jack cheese melting on the griddle. We ate at the kitchen counter with the windows open. The air brought the sea breeze from the coast and the distant noise of the cars on the freeway. We did not talk about what had happened. There was no need. There are people who need to leave to realize what they had, and there are people who need someone to leave to realize what they were missing. I fell into the second category. I do not say it with pride. I state it as a fact. Comment. Hey everyone, I wanted to share what stayed with me after this one. I've learned that protecting your own peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. When someone crosses a clear line, it's okay to hold your boundaries and say no with kindness. Healing often begins the moment you stop waiting for someone to choose you back. Taking responsibility for your decisions, even the painful ones, is how real growth happens. You don't have to return to what once hurt you just because they're struggling now. Choosing calm, steady love over chaos is one of the bravest things you can do for yourself. Kindness matters, but it should never cost your self-respect. I hope this reminds you to value the people who show up consistently without making you compete for their attention. And remember, you deserve a love that feels like home, not a constant test. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.